Ready to dive into some seriously cool language stuff? Today, we're going to be looking at comparatives and superlatives.
And even though our source material is like, for people learning English, we're going way beyond the grammar rule.
We're going deep, right? Like
Yeah.
deeper than the grammar.
Exactly.
So what exactly are we talking about today? Comparatives, superlatives.
Well, it all boils down to this,
Yeah.
you're trying to pick between two things.
Like two apartments.
Sure, and one has a way bigger kitchen.
Okay, so that's a comparative.
Bam. You got it. You just use a comparative right there.
See? I told you this was going to be cool. So is that all there is to it?
Well, no, comparatives, they're for like those head-to-head situations.
Okay.
But when you want to say something's like the absolute best,
Ooh, the best.
you use a superlative.
Like, this is the most delicious pizza ever.
That's it. You nailed it.
Awesome.
Our source material uses tallest building as an example.
Ooh, yeah. Ever been on top of like a really tall building? It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah, you feel so powerful.
Total king of the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that's what superlatives do. Give us that ultimate perspective.
Okay, so that's the idea, but how do we actually like make these words?
Okay, so the grammar part,
Yeah, hit me with it.
it's actually not that bad.
Okay.
Our source material lays it out pretty simply.
Okay.
Like short adjectives like
Okay.
tall, you just add
To make it comparative.
and est for superlative.
So tall, taller, tallest. Got it.
Nailed it. Sometimes, though, you double the last letter before adding the ending.
Like with big.
Yeah, bigger,
Like-
biggest.
Okay.
Now, for longer words, you don't want to say interestingest.
Interestingest. That sounds a little ridiculous.
Right, so that's where more and most come in.
So like more interesting and most interesting.
Exactly.
Getting this.
But wait, there's more. We've got the irregular adjectives.
Ooh, irregulars. Those sound like trouble.
They're kind of like the rebels of the grammar world.
Oh, okay, I'm listening.
Think good, bad, and far. Good turns into better and best.
Bad becomes worse and worst.
You got it? And far goes to farther and farthest.
Wow. I use those all the time. I never knew they were like rule breakers.
It's funny, right?
Yeah.
We just use them without even thinking about it.
It's like our brains just know how to compare things.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. And, our source material was this great example about getting to the train station.
Oh, yeah, trying to find the fastest way.
Right. It says a taxi's faster than walking, but the subway is the fastest.
I can totally relate to that. What about you? How do you get to your like most visited place?
Well, for me, it depends, really,
Yeah, it's like a constant comparison game, right?
for sure. And it's not just like physical distance.
It's everything, right? Like what
Oh.
movie is more thought-provoking?
Totally. And comparatives and superlatives, they let us express all those little differences.
It's wild. It's like a whole hidden level of language.
It really is. So what do you say we take a break, let this all sink in, and then come back for more?
Sounds good to me. We'll be back soon with more on comparatives and superlatives.
Welcome back. So are we ready for more on comparatives and superlatives?
You bet. It's amazing how these comparisons are like everywhere once you start noticing them.
I know. It's like I'm seeing the world in a whole new way.
Exactly. So where should we pick up?
Well, last time we touched on those like irregular
I
adjectives.
know I'm the ones that break all the rules.
Right. Maybe we can dive a little deeper into those.
Sure. They're pretty fascinating and they can add a lot of like personality to your language.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So how do they actually work in like regular conversations?
Well, remember that example from the source material about the train station?
Yeah, the one where they're trying to figure out the fastest way to get there.
Right. It said something like taking a taxi is faster than walking, but the subway is the fastest.
Ah, yeah. So they're using good, better, best without even like thinking about it.
Exactly. It just comes naturally, right?
Yeah, it's like second nature. What about bad, worse, worst? Well, think about if you're like complaining about the weather.
Oh, yeah.
You can say, today's weather is worse than yesterday's.
And if it was really terrible, you could say, this is the worst weather ever.
Exactly. You're getting it.
This is fun. It's like I'm cracking a secret code.
It is kind of like that.
Yeah,
And the more you practice these, the easier they become.
that makes sense. So we've covered the basics and the rule breakers. Now what?
Well, I think it's time to see how we can actually use all this in real life.
Okay, yeah. Let's get practical. How can we use these comparisons to be more like, expressive and interesting?
Well, let's go back to that example about comparing cities.
Okay, the one from the source material.
Yeah, it said something like, Paris is more romantic than London, but London is busier.
Right, and that sparked so much discussion. It made me think, like, which city has the best museums? or the most vibrant nightlife.
C. Comparatives and superlatives, they're not just about stating facts.
Yeah, they're about opinions and starting conversations.
Exactly. They make things more lively and engaging.
So it's not just about travel then, right? We can use these for anything.
Absolutely. Books, movies, music, even those like awkward moments we all have.
Oh man, I have so many awkward moments.
Me too. And the more you describe those comparisons, the more interesting your stories become.
I'm starting to see that. It's like adding details to a painting, you know? It just makes it more vivid.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
These comparisons, they add so much depth and personality to what we say.
So we're not just giving information, we're like telling stories and connecting with people.
That's the power of language, right? And speaking of stories, our source material also talks about describing family members.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It gave that simple example. My sister is taller than me.
Right. But we can take that and make it so much more interesting.
Like how?
Well, you could say, my brother's the funniest person I know, but he also tells the worst jokes.
Uh-huh. So instead of just height, you're showing his personality.
And your relationship with him,
Mhm.
it makes it more personal and relatable.
This is amazing. I feel like we're really starting to unlock the power of comparatives and superlatives.
Me too. It's been a fun journey so far.
It has. Maybe we should pause here for a sec, though, and let everyone catch their breath.
Good idea. We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into comparatives and superlatives.
All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our super deep dive into comparatives and superlatives.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. Who knew there was so much to say about, like, comparing things?
Well, I think it just goes to show how important these comparisons are, you know?
Totally. So before we say goodbye, maybe we could do a quick recap.
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway is that difference between, comparatives and superlatives.
Yeah, like comparatives, they're for when you're putting two things head to head, right?
Exactly. Like this restaurant is better than that one.
But when you want to say something's the absolute best,
That's when you bring in the superlative.
this is the most delicious cake I've ever had.
Perfect example. And we talked about how to actually form those words too.
Yeah, with the er and ast
The
endings.
more and most for longer words.
And of course, who could forget those rule-breaking irregulars?
Oh yeah, those are fun. Like good, better, best.
It's like they have their own little club.
But it's all about how we use these things in real life.
That's what I found so cool. Like when we were talking about choosing between cities or finding the fastest way somewhere.
Right. Those are decisions we all the time.
And then we saw how comparatives and superlatives can make our descriptions so much more, lively and interesting.
It's all about those details,
Yeah.
whether you're talking about your family or your favorite books.
Or even your most embarrassing moments. I feel like we've learned so much about how to use language more effectively.
And not just effectively, but also with more feeling and personality.
Yeah, it's like we're not just saying words, we're painting pictures with them.
Exactly. So as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
I'm all ears.
We talked about far and farther and farthest right.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
physical distance. But what about the farthest reaches of your imagination?
Whoa, that's deep. Like, how would you even describe something beyond the most incredible thing you can imagine?
That's a good question. And it shows how language can be so powerful and flexible.
It's been an amazing deep dive. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be paying more attention to comparatives and superlatives now.
Me too. And I hope you will too.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring the power of language and keep comparing.
And until next time, keep diving deep.